Well, hi, Jen.
Well, hello. Good
We're
morning.
matching. I just noticed.
Yes, I love this color. This is such a summery color. It's so
I do
fun.
too. It's when I'm wearing one of my cat t-shirts that says, "Mew are my sunshine. Mew are my sunshine."
I love
Yes,
it.
and I'm drinking from a new, I don't know if I showed you this, my new black cat mug.
Aw, I
I
love that.
know. I
That's so
know it was on clearance at Hobby Lobby 2 weeks ago, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't need this, but I'm getting it.
but I'm getting it because that's what makes life fun. Got to have a little
No.
joy in all of the craziness of life, right? I have my I don't know if I mentioned before, but I use the Full Focus Planner by Michael
Yeah,
Hyatt's company, right?
yeah.
And one of the things I love is every week they ask you, what are you going to do to connect with other people? What are you going to do for relaxation? What are you going to do for restoration? And that has been so good for me to think about, who am I connecting with this week? Who am I hanging out with? What things am I going to do? Last night I went to the bowl. We have this big outdoor theater in the nearby town, and they had big band music. And just sit out under the stars and listen to great music. I mean, that's very restorative.
It
And as
is.
creatives, like if our well is empty, we
Yes.
are, we can't produce anything out of that. So if it's a silly little cat mug, if it's going to the movies, if it's listening to music, if it's hanging out with friends, whatever it is that restores that creativity part of you.
We have to.
Yeah, and a mug. I mean, think about happiness, like for $5 or whatever, right? Like that's a
I
pretty
got
cheap.
it for 3. Thank you very much. It was on clearance,
$3.
but yeah, I like that you were just kind of breaking through those things. I also started something today unintentionally, but I every day I wake up and I'm like, man, I'm not in shape, or I'm not eating as healthy as I want. Maybe I'll start on Monday. Maybe I'll change it up. And I woke up this morning, and while I was getting ready, I was like, no, I'm starting today. And I started after right before I took a shower and right after I took a shower, I started stretching. And I thought, you know what? A little bit. I used to be big into yoga. I'm like, the only way to get to where you want to be in anything, and writing a book, I've learned this, and taking your health back over and anything in between, is you just have to start. And a few moves will get you better. And so, remaining grounded and figuring out what that is. Or maybe if you're an author who is attempting to navigate book publishing for the first time, or marketing, or anything in between, maybe it's listening to one podcast or watching our one live streams each week, or whatever. Like the small steps all add up.
Yeah, I love that. Is what James Clear, I think, is in his book Atomic Habits. I think this is the superpower of that book. Is
Right.
His whole point is to establish
Yep.
such a small goal, such a small step that you can't possibly miss it. And then you're establishing the habit. Like he's really about the habit. And I have been doing that with when I put my phone on the charger at night, doing a couple yoga stretches. And because I want to connect with, okay, my phone's on the charger for the night, so I'm done for the day. And then I want to connect those two things in my head. And I
Oh, I
think
love it.
and then you can build on that, right? Once you have the habit, then you can make it bigger, you can build on it, whatever. But I think one, as you and I have talked about, sitting all day in front of a computer is, it's like smoking, right? It's terrible for you.
Not good. Yep.
You got to get up. Your bodies are made to get up and move around. And so, Joanna Penn says, we're not brains on a stick. We do have a body. We have a body that we inhabit, and we need to be holistic, about, moving or walking or whatever. And those creative juices flow so much when you take a break. I was listening to an author talk yesterday on a podcast who said, he works, let's say, from 9 to 4 every day. And he goes, even though I'm only at my desk about 2 hours, I'm working that whole time, because if I'm taking a walk, if I'm going for a hike, things are percolating.
Yep.
And I think that's really important to remember. We tend to really think I'm only working if I'm at the desk, on the hands on the keyboard, right? And there's a time for that, and that certainly is important. But you could spend 9 to 4 in front of your desk and get 1,500 words and feel very frustrated. Whereas if you took a walk or whatever, you might have more ideas. It may not transfer to words on the page in that moment,
right?
But it goes back to that compost pile that I love, that imagery I love, because you're throwing things in there that are going to break down and turn into something wonderful that's going to fertilize your creative spirit.
Yes, it is. And, We're talking about self-publishing and we're talking about habits. And my editor over here has been calling me out on a book I'm working on in the self-publishing space. So more to come there. I love it. But yeah, it's creating positive associations with hard kind of challenges, and it's things we can do. So the challenge for y'all today, whether you're listening to us live or later, is to figure out what's something that you can do that positively gets you moving towards your goals of whatever those are. And if it is self-publishing, finishing this live stream will be a great success to that day, because we're kicking off this month of August today, talking about self-publishing insights, tips, tricks, things that we wish we knew, things we know now, things that people don't tell you, and everything in between. So we'll be talking about self-publishing over the next several weeks. But today, Jen, I thought we would start with the pros and the cons.
Yes.
I feel like we have to talk about it, because like with every publishing approach, there's good and bad and ugly.
It's true. And that it doesn't make one better than the other, but you have to evaluate for your situation what's best for you. And I find that most people just really don't have any idea. We have a lot of really outdated ideas of what we think traditional publishing is like and self-publishing. And so it's really good just to look at all of that. And then you can evaluate your situation, your goals, what you're trying to accomplish, and which way is best for you. This is so timely because
it is.
Last night, while I was sitting in my lovely lawn chair out under the, wasn't quite the stars yet, it was sunset, and listening to the band do their sound check and all this stuff. And so I'm scrolling through my Instagram feed, and I have a lot of author friends in the traditional space still. And I saw one of their new covers, and I thought, that is horrific. And she can do nothing about it, right? She can do nothing about it. So I texted another friend of mine, it's a mutual friend. And I said, look at this latest cover. And I said, this is why I love being independent. I could swap that out in a second. I could do something different. I could hire a different cover designer. And that goes to our first point about self-publishing, which is the advantage of self-publishing is control. You're a control freak. If it's a project where you want high control over every aspect of it, self-publishing, this is one place where self-publishing really comes out ahead. You control the timeline, you control the content, you control the marketing, you control everything. Sometimes that can be overwhelming and feel like a lot. So maybe that's the con part of it too.
Right.
But for many, many things, and for my nonfiction friends, I mean, I have a couple case studies here. So fiction people, I have, like I said, author friends in the traditional space who wrote a series with a particular character, and their publisher decided not to buy any more books from them, but also would not release those books back to them. So when she wanted to go self-publish, she could not use that character.
Oh, that's annoying.
Right. And so there's been a big battle about trying to get those rights back.
That's not fair.
So in the fiction space, that's something to think about. If you are a fiction person who is creating a large world or some really specific characters, if you go in the traditional space, know that you are ceding all of that over, and you may or may not have the option to get that back. In the nonfiction space, something people don't realize is that if you want to create additional content, workbook, courses, videos, webinars, seminars, you may not have the right to do that. If you have ceded control over to a traditional publisher, depending on what your contract says, you may have ceded over the rights to all the different formats. Now you may not, and those are things to be aware of if you want to go into that. Those are things you definitely have to make sure, depending on what your goals are. I've, again, known nonfiction authors who were like, oh, I wrote this book, I sold it to so-and-so. They haven't really been pushing it very much, but I'm going to come over here and create a video course based on it. And they did not have the rights to do that.
Yeah. You might not be able to. So pro tip, or pro number one is control. And as with every pro, there is a con. And the con is that sometimes when you have too much control, if you don't know what you're doing, you might not do it to the level at which
it's all on you. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would say audiobooks, I forgot to mention, audiobooks also fall into that category. Most publishers are buying the rights. When they buy your package of rights, they buy the rights to the audiobook too. Whether or not they ever make it, you cannot make it. And so again, those are things to be aware of if you go into that space. But yes, the con is it is all on you, right? So then you have to figure out how to do all that. You have to figure out how to hire appropriate people to help you in those places that you don't have the skill set for. And maybe you don't have the ability to judge, is this a good cover designer? Is this a good editor? Is this a good marketing person? Like you just wouldn't. That's why we're here, to help answer those questions and help give you that kind of thing. So that's definitely literally the other side of that coin, for sure.
Yeah. Pro 1, control.
Yeah.
I like this. We're going to do this on this one.
This is good. I like it.
We're going to share it. So pro number 2 is speed.
Yes.
When you look at all of the different publishing options out there, traditional publishing can take many years to get an agent, and an agent to help you find someone. And I mean, it could be a very long journey.
And even when they contract you, they're usually contracting you not for right away, but for several years down the line.
And I lose energy. I would
when we're building our pipeline, we're building it 3 to 5 years out. And so that's really, I mean, you can write a book. I have heard authors say, I wrote this book and then, oh yeah, I forgot all about it, because now it's coming out like 2 years later.
Right.
I'm on to other things. I have to go back and think about, what the heck was that book about?
Right.
So it's not speedy. And so if you have something that's topical or timely, or you just want your book out there, self-publishing, you can, I mean, some people definitely throw things up sooner than they should go up.
Well, sure. Yeah. So that's a con too. So yeah, I mean, obviously, if you go traditional, you're talking several years. Hybrid, many of those are about a year, give or take, in that journey too. When you self-publish, though, because you have control, you do get to decide, all right, well, am I going to have find a cover designer, and it's really based, I guess, on the people who are helping you and how you can piece together your project. So yeah, there are some people who get their book up in a day, to which I say that is a con, because of how fast things happen. The quality could be impacted.
Totally.
But if you are, someone who has a reason for a date and really wants to work backwards and is willing to make sure they have the right steps in, like, the speed can be a good thing. I mean, you don't have to wait forever and always. It is something that you could
like we've talked about with your book, timing it around, the seasons, and other books that might be around like a holiday or a certain, this is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and you have a book around that, right? So being able to have the flexibility and the timing, the ability to get things out quickly to hit those kinds of things that can help with the marketing, that can be a fantastic way. I know people that were like, I wanted this book out by my 50th birthday, or other things, other really important personal milestones. And you can do that with self-publishing. And again, the con can also be the con, but
absolutely.
If you hire great people to help you with it, you definitely can move through. If you have anything that you're talking about that's really timely, I mean, we know the news and what's happening in the world changes quickly, and to be able to get your book, if you're a thought leader in that space, to be able to get your book out there quickly to address those issues before it kind of falls off the radar, very important.
It is. So speed, if speed is a need of yours, self-publishing can be a solution for it. We just encourage you to not go too fast, like go fast to go slow to go fast, or whatever, right? Like, make sure that you're not taking a negative at the quality, attacking the quality for the need of the timing. A third one, Jen, for pro, I think, is in the royalty space. So, talk to us a little bit about about this one. I know you know more of the ins and outs on royalties and how they come in play, but as a self-published author, you will get the most royalties out of the deal.
Yeah. So in the traditional space, of course, you get generally, this is general, obviously everybody's contract is different. So you get net off of what after the publisher has, taken their expenses out. And this is, I'm not even going to talk about the advanced space, because that's different thing. But I used to tell people, you can plan on about $1 a book for a hardcover or a trade paperback, right? About $1 a book. Mass market ebooks, much, much less, like maybe 30 cents. I know. Yeah. So very, that's just sort of rough figures, right? So, and your agent gets a cut, and, all that kind of thing. For example, if you're publishing on Amazon KDP, you get 70%. So quite a big difference. You can sell fewer books and make more money.
Yep.
And I know that I would say in my experience of the authors I know in the traditional space that are just sort of, basic mid-level authors along with equivalent indie authors. The indie authors are making 3 or 4 times the amount of money.
I think it also comes down to, this is where marketing comes in, because just because you get a larger chunk of royalties in self-publishing, a con is if you're not out selling books, you'll get nothing.
Yeah, 70% of zero is
yeah, right.
not.
And, on the flip side, in the space for traditional, right? Like if you're still not out marketing your book, you won't reap any returns either. Oh, Mary Ellen popped in and said that she listens to the podcast when she works out every morning. Yay. That might be her, that's a great habit, Jen.
That's a great habit.
That's habit stacking is what we would
That
call it,
is.
right?
Yeah.
You're doing something else and you're adding to it. But that's awesome. That's awesome. But going back to the royalties and going back to marketing, your books do not sell themselves, people.
They do not.
Publishers don't sell books easily either. Like you have to market them. Like
marketing is probably the thing that is going to be the same across both. I know a lot of people will say, well, I want to go traditional because I don't want to do any marketing. I just want to write the books. And to that I say, you will have to market or you will never get another contract. In fact, in a book proposal, there's a whole section on marketing. What are you going to do to help sell your book? The publisher wants to know you can sell that first run yourself without them doing anything. That makes a big difference in these days with wanting platforms. And so regardless of where you go, you have to be marketing. Now, if you are self-published, you have more levers you can pull because you can change prices, you can set up promotions, you can do things with other authors. You got a lot more flexibility. When you are traditionally published, you do have the backing of a big name. They put you in their catalog. They have their sales reps out there. Of course, they're not just selling your book, they're selling lots of other books. But you do have a little bit of that energy behind you that you have to kind of come up with from scratch when you are self-publishing. But regardless, you have to be out there getting that interest, developing your fan base, developing your readership, and creating that momentum regardless of which way you go.
Yeah, no matter where you go, you have to do that. So, 3 pros, you have control, speed is on your side, and you get the most out of royalties. I mean, there's others, like there's more flexibility, or if you find an adjustment that you need to make, you can re-upload easier, that you own all of your intellectual property. All those are other great pros. But I'm going to make a pivot to cons, if you're cool with that, Jen. Are you ready?
Sounds great.
Okay, I'm thinking let's do the first con as quality control. I think we've scratched the surface on this.
Yes.
And
huge.
This is big. It is big because it also comes with a stigma in the industry. This is why the self-publishing has a poor stigma at times, right? On quality. And I think it's because you're the one that is controlling the process. And if you don't know what to look for, you don't know, or the reality is you can't, most people are not a designer, an author, a writer, an editor, and a marketer all in one. Like most people aren't. And so if you don't ask for help and find the right people, you could have quality control issues.
Very, very true. And this is huge. And it's really hard to gain a reader back once you turn them off. Like that's a really big challenge. And so, people say you only have one chance to make a first impression. And that's really true with books as well. So you really want to put out the highest quality book that you can. That includes, looking for typos. And as we have discussed in the editing sections on some of these videos, that is not an easy task. You need multiple eyes on it. Definitely not just your own or your neighbors. You're looking at cover design, interior design, proper formatting. I mean, all you have to do is look at some reviews on Amazon where people complain about, the poor formatting or a book that was difficult to read because it wasn't set up properly. And an ebook is essentially like a website, like it's HTML language. And so having programs or knowing how to do that or something like that, that's not something that most of us know how to do to make it look correct. And it'll give a poor reading experience for your reader. And then why would they come back and give you another chance?
I know, you're right. All about trust. There was an author that recently had reached out because they had they had been working with a publisher and then made a pivot from using a hybrid to doing self-publishing, and had leveraged kind of an approach where she did research and found people to help her. But the book came out, and because she's not in the industry, she didn't realize that the content was formatted for large print versus standard print. And so that impacted everything. It impacts the cover and the spine width. It impacts everything. And not that a large print text format isn't good. But if that's not what you're expecting, and if that's not who your target audience, that's not how they're consuming information, you might be that becomes a quality control problem, and breaks trust with people who may have pre-ordered the book and received it that way.
And then be like, wow, this really doesn't look professional.
Yeah.
And especially in the nonfiction space, when the book is an entryway to something else, a course or a service that you offer, people are going to, whether they do it consciously or not, wonder, well, if you didn't do a good job on your book, how are you going to do a good job with me, consulting on my finances or teaching me leadership or whatever, right? It puts that question mark there.
Yeah. Jen, what would you say another con is?
I'd say the other thing is, and this is the big thing for most people, is cost. Yes, you can do everything for free and it will show.
And it will show. Yes, it will.
I mean, I tell people you wouldn't do your own, unless you were a mechanic, you wouldn't work on your own car or work on your own house. You think of all the different things about your house and your car and cutting your own hair, right? I mean, some people definitely do those things. But most of us do pay for people who have those skills to do it the right way. And so this again, I think is a holdover from traditional publishing, where I hear people say, well, money should always flow to the author and not away from the author. And I'm like, if you want something speeded up, you pay to have things speeded up. So if you want to take 10 years to learn how to do all of these things and to do good craft and to do all that, you can. It's perfectly possible. But if you want your book out within the year, you are going to need to pay for professionals to do these different things for you for the long term. The tradition, again, as when we talked about royalties, right? So in the traditional publishing house, of course, they pay for their staff to do that, but you are paying for it. It's coming out of your royalties. Yes, and so you're getting, less money for that. And so it's kind of the same way, except you're paying for it up front. And then, over time, your royalties are larger than they would be in traditional. So it's that is the thing. But, some people legitimately are like, I don't have the budget for that. And then you have to change your goals, just like you would with anything in life. Based on your budget.
Yeah, budget is important. And knowing what you're willing to invest in is also important. Like, what are the things that matter? When people ask me what they should invest in when it comes to self-publishing their book, I always say a quality cover and editing.
Yes, I agree, 100%.
I mean, you notice I don't say marketing first. I do believe that you need that to sell the book. But if you don't have a strong book from the beginning, then the book isn't marketable anyways. So
I love the saying, good marketing makes a bad book fail faster.
I know that is a good phrase, and it's totally accurate. But when you look at cost too, so many people think that self-publishing is the cheaper, right? Because you can do it for free. But I find many authors find themselves spending more than if they would have just invested in some support and the right support in the beginning, because then they go, oh, well, I just, took a photo and gave it to somebody to put on a PDF and upload it for the cover. Oh, I didn't realize that people, judge a book by its cover. They do. Or, oh, well, I just uploaded a Word document. I'm like, oh my gosh, then they're paying people who know the industry to break it apart and fix it for them. And it would have been easier and more cost effective if they just would have invested in help in the beginning to get it done, in a much more professional approach. Not saying you have to do that, but cost is a thing. It's a benefit because cheaper cost than a hybrid published, but it is a con because if you don't know what you're doing, that can be part of the problem. And I would say that's the third con I want to talk about is having the fact that you do have full control and responsibility. Yes. If you don't know what you're doing, it's like, what is it? Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and different results. If you don't know it, then then how are you going to navigate it well without help? And so, not to say that you can't learn it. I believe there's, people value time and money differently. Some value time more than money and vice versa. But depending upon if you're willing to learn it or willing to get help from it and learn for it, having full control could be a bad thing if you don't know what to do. Like if I had full control of building my home, Jen, I would still be in the building phase, not 4 years later living in it, right? Because I don't know. I would have come across hurdles and obstacles.
Right. Things
Unexpected.
you wouldn't even know about, grading your lot or pulling permits or digging for all the water, sewer, electric stuff, right? All that stuff. Like, you don't even think about that when you look at your house. You're like, oh, look, I'm just going to throw some wood sides up and then, paint the walls and we'll move in. Right? There's so much more that goes into it.
We know that we would never do that for a house, but for whatever reason, you look at a book and you're like, oh, I could do that. And you can, but should you? Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And so should you? Please don't take Jen and I talking about this pros and cons of self-publishing and the fact that we don't like it. We both really approve and love and enjoy indie publishing, but we just want you to have the curtains pulled back and know that just because there are things that are positives doesn't mean that it is a free direction. It does. Quality self-publishing requires you to make an investment and get support and find people who can help you get it over the finish line.
And that way, when you're informed, you can make good decisions that are aligned with your goals.
Yeah.
So if you are writing just a family memoir that's a legacy, some of the stuff is not going to be nearly as important. But if you're a business owner that's using your book as like I say, a $10 business card as a door opener for bigger business, your goals are going to be different and you're going to have a different bar, a different level of things you're going to need to take care of. So think about what your goals are, what you want to accomplish, and then you have the right tools and information to make good decisions to accomplish those goals.
Oh, so much to talk about. This just began the discussion. I hope that people come back and aren't like, but the good news is, and just know we are sharing this very authentically, but because of that, we've had so many people who have come to us and wanted help. We do have a supported self-publishing solution where Jen and I come together and we help authors bring the book to the page and beyond. And so if you're interested, let us know. But yeah, it doesn't have to be scary. It can be overwhelming, I know, but it can also be glorious. And there's a lot of beautiful perks to it. So through the rest of this month, we'll be talking about the specific costs to consider. We'll be talking about, I'm trying to think of some of the other things, Jen, that's on the docket. We'll be talking about like common questions and the different platforms. And these are all things that people don't know if you don't live and work in the industry. And so I think it'll be really helpful. Jen, are you reading anything right now? I haven't asked you this.
I am actually. I think it's called The Idea Factory, like about the Bell Labs, the telephone invention early in the 1920s, not even the 2020s, the 1920s, when they're trying to figure out how do you get telephones across the US? How do you keep all of that work, like all of the behind the scenes? And so it's very fascinating. I look at the scientists and the technicians and so Bell Labs was known as like one of the great incubators of innovation. And I'm always fascinated by innovation and creativity and how people come up with things. I mean, this was brand new, like they're having to create things and make things and running into problems and solving problems. And one thing that I took away, and I'm only at the very beginning of it, but one of the things I took away that was so interesting to me was that during the Great Depression, they went to a 4-day work week. And so on the other days, the inventors still loved to invent and experiment, whatever. They were just much more casual about it. Like they didn't have work, right? So they would still hang out. And the senior scientists and inventors would kind of mentor the younger ones and they'd play with ideas. And a lot of really cool stuff came out of that. So my takeaway from that was we need space away from the every day, right? To just let creativity percolate, kind of like what we were talking about at the beginning. To let it kind of come to the surface, to make connections that you wouldn't have otherwise. And if you think about in the 1920s, they didn't have a 5-day work week. They normally had a 6-day work week. So they had lost 2 days out of their work week. And you can see now the 4-day work week is coming back as being a thing that people are talking about because of some of these things that they learned 100 years ago.
Yes.
So I think it's always really worthwhile to see how other people have done creativity. And of course, now we're like way beyond. I mean, 100 years ago, they were just trying to figure out the telephone. And now we're at cell phones, cell towers. I could actually talk to people on my watch.
Right
Like,
in your watch.
crazy. I actually remember thinking about that when I was in like third grade, thinking about my friend had walked home at lunch at school, elementary school. She had walked home for lunch, and I was kind of sitting on the playground wondering when she was going to come back. And I was like, wouldn't it be really cool if I could just call her, and she, wherever she's at, she could just answer.
And Jen, you were being innovative.
Somebody had that idea before me.
That's fun. That's fun.
Yeah.
But that's a good challenge for y'all between now and next week is if self-publishing is your process and something you're wanting to do, or anything in the book marketing space, don't, run, skip, give yourself some space to be innovative and creative, let things marinate. When you do, you give yourself the ability to do it right and to think through things from different angles. And many times greater things come from that. All right, Jen, well, send us off until next week.
Well, authors, you have power. Your words have power. Your message has power. And we invite you each week to join us and bring that here with us. And as we take it to the page and beyond, all things book writing, marketing, editing, the whole enchilada. We'll talk about it here. So join us next week.
Bye, guys.